There are places out there you can't find on any map. They're not gone. They're just lost.
So the first trailer for the new Uncharted movie just came out, and you know what? I thought it was actually pretty good, all things considered, and I just wanted to give my quick 2 cents on it because it's actually a trailer that I quite liked, and it's a movie I'm anticipating. I think there was good and bad aspects to the trailer that I feel like deserve talking about, and just to be clear, I don't think this movie is going to be horrible, but I also don't think it's going to be amazing. I think it's going to fit somewhere in between Sonic the Hedgehog and Detective Pikachu, where it's going to be a fun but pointless movie, as in it's going to have a lot of really good action, probably have some good jokes, and probably have an entertaining performance or two from either Tom Holland or Mark Wahlberg, but overall it's not going to have a grand effect, which, you know what, I'm perfectly fine about. Speaking of the 2 leads, I guess now would be a good time to talk about the casting of this movie that's gotten a lot of controversy. Obviously, Tom Holland is very young and not quite the person we would expect to be Nathan Drake, and while I understand that, it's very clear that this movie is setting up future movies, which obviously might not happen if this movie doesn't do well. All depends on this one, and with that, it's very likely that Tom Holland could grow with his character, and for a lot of other people, I don't know if they feel this way, but I don't really think of Tom Holland as a young actor. Obviously, you know, he's Peter Parker, he's Spider-Man, that's sort of the character we always assume that he's typecast as, but really, I think he could pull off an older role like this version of Nathan Drake. And I don't know how I feel yet about Mark Wahlberg as Sully, because again, this is obviously meant to be the beginning of their story, which is something I'll talk about later when I get to some of the negatives of the movie, but also Mark Wahlberg is clearly somebody that has a lot of star power behind him, and I imagine that was the main choice behind picking him as Sully, but again, he's just somebody who doesn't conventionally look like Sully. I've heard a lot of people say that by the end of this movie, he's going to have a mustache somehow, which will reference, you know, Sully from the games, which, you know, I'd be fine with, but overall, I really don't know how I feel about him. I'm confident that Tom Holland's going to do a good job, but I'm not so sure about Mark Wahlberg as Sully. I would say one of the best positives of the trailer so far is that it looks like it's really respecting the source material. Obviously, there's that scene at the end of the trailer that looks like it's straight from Uncharted 3 when he's falling out of the plane, and that looks like a great homage. I'm not sure how it's going to actually play out in the movie, whether or not it's going to be, you know, just a rip-off, or it's actually going to have an important point in the story. That's something that really needs to be added in a lot of video game movies like this. Obviously, you want to make references to the source material, you want to show that you care about it, but you need to integrate it into the story properly. And I hope that it's done like that, because that's a really great scene from the game, but if they just shoehorn it in, it could obviously be a problem. But above all, I'd say the thing they most have to nail about this movie, and something that I kind of got from the trailer but I hope is expanded more when we actually see the movie, is the vulnerability of Nathan Drake. Because a lot of people say he is like a modern day Indiana Jones, and that's very true, because one of the cornerstones of Indiana Jones is that he's just a guy. He's just a guy going out and trying to find these treasures, much like Nathan Drake, and because of that, he's very vulnerable, and he's very capable of dying, I guess you could say. And for instance, Indiana Jones 4 was a movie that very much so put Indy on a pedestal, and I hope that that's something that this movie doesn't do, because the vulnerability of Nathan Drake is one of the best parts. Again, he's just a guy, so watching him get beat up or lose a lot of fights and somehow manage to survive by the skin of his teeth is one of the largest appeals of Nathan Drake, and so I hope they don't turn him into like an epic John Wick style Jason Bourne fighting and killing machine. And then now I want to talk about some of the things that I would say I didn't like so much, and the big one was the script feels a little weird, and you can tell because there's certain lines that don't really make much sense when you really think about them.
I'm a friend of Sully's.
Sully doesn't have any friends. I should know I'm one of them.
I'd say the script is probably the most important part of the movie they really need to nail, and if they don't, then that could really suffer, and I hope that they do a good job with it. But from what I'm seeing, it kind of looks hit or miss, and overall, I feel like if the script is lacking, then the rest of the movie is going to be lacking, and so that's the area where I'm most scared right now. But I'd also say another area that really scares me is obviously the retcon of the origin. it's very clear that in this movie we're seeing Sully and Nate meet for the first time in the scene that looks like they're at a bar. And again, I don't know how I feel about that because I just saw the trailer a little bit ago, but I loved their origin from the game series, and I don't know if they're going to full on change it in this, or maybe they'll retroactively, add that in later on. But from this, it kind of seems a little like it's less energy, because obviously Nate and Sully's relationship is the cornerstone of the game, and it kind of feels like their first interaction and then their story throughout will be a little less important if they sort of retcon how they meet. Obviously, this is all subject to change as the movie comes out. We might get, I might end up being totally wrong about everything I'm predicting here, and I kind of hope I am about some of this stuff, and I am definitely excited to see it, but I do have some worries from the trailer, and obviously, video game movies have a stigma now, but I feel like we're sort of getting to the point now where they can sort of be more acceptable. Obviously, Detective Pikachu and Sonic I really liked. Didn't care so much about Mortal Kombat, but I hope that this can fit somewhere in between. I hope that this movie understands what it is, and that it can be a really fun action-adventure movie that doesn't take itself too seriously.